welcome to our journey in video. So the year is 2008. It is a hot summer in Battle Creek, Michigan. And it's one of the more important days of my professional life. It's my first day at a job that I had hoped for, that I was so passionate to get at one of the world's largest food companies, largest, most prestigious food companies. Now, there are some things that are harshing my mellow a little. I haven't finished my degree yet. My buddies are saying, why do you want to live in Battle Creek? What is that, a war zone? Why don't you come home and live in Silicon Valley and we could code, and we could do what people do here? But there's something pulling me toward Kellogg. There's opportunity there. And coming from a consulting background, I was very fortunate to have a very important mentor. And he would tell me, he would say, Eric, actually didn't call me Eric, he'd say, kid, no matter what you do, you need to add value. You need to add value. I said, okay, I need to add value. And not wanting to think for myself, I said, well, how do I add value? And he was very animated. He would always do this, add value. It's like putting a box on a table, add value. How do I add value? And he said, well, there's a couple ways to do it. Number one, look for something slow, make it fast. He said another thing that you could do is you could look for something expensive, make it cheaper. You could also look for something complicated and make it simple and effective. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. And he said, but there's one thing that's more important than all of those. So I leaned in, because that's what you do when things are important. So I leaned in. And he said, once you figure something out, teach other people to do it and organize the resources so you can raise something to the level of a capability, then go do something else. And that advice had kind of guided my professional career for quite some time. So here I am, I'm at Kellogg, and I'm very excited, and I'm thinking, what do I need to do? I need to add value, right? I need to add value. So I'm in meeting after meeting, and I am struggling. I don't have a background in food. I don't quite understand all these terms. And going into the role, I was fairly certain that you took the dough, you put it in the oven, it came out, you put it in the box with the right character, and you sell it. But I'm in these meetings and I'm finding out that this is a very sophisticated business. This is a very competitive business, and I was a bit intimidated. So meeting after meeting of not being able to add value, I find myself in a meeting where we're reviewing a statement of work, and there was a video request. So as with all statements of work, what do you do with the first couple pages? Well, you skip them, right? What are you looking for? How much is this going to cost, and how long is it going to take? So we get to that page, and I look at that page, and it says 8 weeks for this video that's being requested. And then I see a number that shocks me. $2,000 per finished minute. Now, I'm in graduate school, and I don't mind telling you that was more than I made in a year. So before consulting my manager or my better judgment, immediately in open meeting, I say, I could do it cheaper and faster, right? So the heads turn and they look at me and they say, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, I'll align various resources and stakeholders to strategically. I don't know what I said. It was like a business word salad, but somehow I was given the project. Now, I've been a Mac lover for a long time. Personally, I've had my Mac and I loved shooting video. I never did anything really with it, but I would shoot a lot of video. So I find myself a couple weeks later with the executive who is requesting this video. And I don't know if I mentioned, it was a 10-minute video. I mean, that was $20,000 that they were looking to spend on this. So here we are a couple weeks later. I bring in my Mac, I bring in my video camera, and we shoot this video. And it goes fairly well. We actually did it in an hour. And then about 3 days later, I was able to edit it, and I was able to turn it in. I added value. It was super cheap. It was effectively free because I didn't have the wherewithal to think, oh, maybe I can actually get some money for this. And it was super fast because I was doing it myself. So what do you think happened? We got more requests for videos. Pretty soon in this large organization, people started saying, hey, Eric and Sales L&D, they're giving away free videos. So executive after executive came to us and they said, hey, shoot a video, and I did it. And I thought, this is fantastic, I'm adding value. And remembering those principles, I thought, okay, well, I'm doing it quickly, I'm making it cheap, and taking the complex, make it simple and high quality. I don't know what that means, but I can teach other people to do this. So I convinced the organization to give me an intern. And then now there's 2 of us, we're adding value, we're making videos. And then soon this intern becomes a contractor. How cool is that? I feel like I have a most mini department. And then there's another intern, and before you know it, there's 3 or 4 of us doing this kind of work. And the foundation of the team that I was able to create, that I had the privilege of creating, was really in those principles of adding value through video. So kind of as an intellectual exercise, I thought, I was able to add value because video was very expensive and it took a long time 10 years ago. But if I were going to do that again, how would I do that? The world's very different now. And one of the big things that has changed in the world, from my perspective, is the means of creating video and accessing it have evolved tremendously. There's this big word that I guess I'll use because I read about it, the democratization of the tools of production. What does that mean? That means we all probably right now have HD video quality capabilities in our pockets. How many people recently got a new phone because HD wasn't good enough, they wanted to shoot 4K video? I did. When you went to buy that phone, what did you use to make that purchase decision? You probably watched some videos. And how were you able to do that? You were able to do that because it is so easy to access video now. How many people this morning have already watched a video? How many people have watched more than one video? How many people woke up, fired up YouTube, started watching video, let YouTube autoplay while you were getting ready? I know I did. How many people continued that journey with headphones on their way here to this very room? How many people are currently still watching or listening to those videos? It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So because video has gotten so ubiquitous, I don't think that we can compete as much in speed and cost as we once could. But that one concept that I didn't quite understand years ago, how do we make the complex simple and high quality? I think that's probably where we can compete now. We have made hundreds and hundreds of talking head videos. And as we've done that, we've learned that there are certain things that these talking head videos do well. There are certain things that these talking head videos don't do so well. So I want to take you through our journey and kind of what we've learned. And Kellogg has come a long way from the talking head. And what we found is by following this very simple 4-step process, we've been able to evolve our ability to make videos. And the first 2 steps may ring as very intuitive, but remarkably, when I talk to video producers, it's very often that they do not consider these things. First, what are you trying to accomplish with your video? Now, often we might hear, well, what I want to accomplish with my video is just to get my message out. Okay, but what effect do you want that message to have in the world? I mean, that's what we need to get to, is what is the purpose of this video? How should it change the world? Also, what's the best vehicle to put your video in? And then once you have these 2 pieces of information, how do you storyboard this out and then eventually do step 4, which is so very easy now these days? We don't get as concerned about video formats or qualities. We upload it to a video distribution service. It then streams it out. In some cases, that's still a bit of a challenge, but YouTube is standing up with business solutions. Vimeo is standing up with business solutions and really helping to solve some of those things. So we brought some videos along to show you some of the things that we've done on our journey. But the first thing that's been most important is we need to determine the intent of our video, and it starts in the most analog way possible. How do we write down this intent, and how do we connect what we intend to happen in the world with the format of the video? Okay, and we're going to show you various formats. The first format is the talking head, so we're going to give you an example and talk a little bit about it.
Hello, I'm Michael Hunter, and I'm here to share with you how our commercial teams can unlock our social purpose and sustainability vision to build powerful customer relationships and create value for our shoppers. At Kellogg's, we strive to make food people love, and that means more than great tasting food. People care about where their food comes from, as well as the people who grow and make their food.
So what's great about the talking head? Here's what we've learned. The talking head, especially for international business, a global business, is great to get that face recognition. There are so many things that you can see in a talking head video that you can't get from a blog post. All those micro expressions. You can hear the way that people are inflecting their voice. You get this sense of authenticity, of passion. But there's two sides to this coin. Talking head exposes all those things. If you have a leader that's not necessarily comfortable on screen, their nervousness, their lack of potential prep because of all the other things that they need to do in the organization may come off as insincerity, as lack of commitment. Talking heads are both effective and dangerous. And as we made talking heads, we were thinking, okay, add value, add value. Let's make it as easy as possible. Let's have somebody stand in and get the lighting just right. Let's have somebody stand in and do the audio just right. Oh, leader, you don't have time to memorize your script? No problem, we'll get a teleprompter. And we did that, and the leader started to use the teleprompter, and how do you think it went? Well, it turns out teleprompter reading is a skill of and in itself. It also turns out that not everybody has the same visual acuity. So when you have a leader who's looking at my tiny teleprompter that cost me $200, it probably should have cost $2,000, and they're squinting at it, this makes for a very awful video. Right? And now the message is completely obscured with some technology deficiencies, with some potentially skill deficiencies. Now, on the other hand, you get a great leader who's media trained. This is fantastic. This is a great format, the talking head. It's a way of connecting people who may not be able to get that face-to-face. This is interesting. You know, if we look at our YouTube watching behavior, and I observe my wife's YouTube watching behavior a lot, and there are certain personalities that she loves. There's this one, Matthew, you guys know this guy, Matthew Santorum? Anyway, he's very popular. I think it's like 50 million views that he has and a bunch of subscribers. And he's a personality that does a lot of these list videos. Here's the top 10 spookiest places in Orlando. And you watch it and it's interesting and you're seeing his face and you can't wait for his next video because he's very animated and very interested. And we thought, wow, can we bring that to Kellogg? And it turned out that we had someone on our team who's very animated, very interesting, very good at a personality-driven message. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is Kevin.
Hey everyone, I'm Kevin with Commercial Capability Development, and welcome to your 2-minute drill. Today on the 2-minute drill, we're talking high-gain questions. Now, high-gain questions are a valuable tool that can be leveraged during your sales conversations to gain insight and get additional information from your store decision makers. They're also a vital part of RK way of selling.
So 2-minute drill. This is a hosted show. We started bringing in shows, not just leaders telling their message, but how can we support what they're trying to drive, what initiative they're trying to drive with a personality. Kevin comes in with a very short format, with meaningful content, and he's going to be back. It's a serialized show, and we brand that show, 2-minute drill, and people start talking about the 2-minute drill shows in very interesting ways that they weren't talking about the talking head videos. Very low budget, very quick to produce, but by putting some branding around it, it starts to get name recognition. And leaders started to come to us and say, hey, how do I get my message on the 2-minute drill? Oh, this is very interesting. All of a sudden, it's not just the fact that we're shooting video, but we've created a branded experience. We've created a show that is a new vehicle to get information out. I wonder if we can do it again. So this is the talk show format. So the other two formats, it's just you listening to someone communicate something. But it's kind of a passive experience. You know, you don't get to ask your question. Well, what if we could take a version of you, put them next to the expert, and now there's a conversation, and maybe that interviewer is asking some of the questions that you might ask.
Stephanie Slingerland, Director of Philanthropy and Social Impact. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So talk to us about philanthropy.
Philanthropy is really about giving back to your community, and that can come to life.
So the Talking Growth Show, this is what we call it. The Talking Growth Show is a different format. It's a conversational format, like we see when Elliot is interviewing somebody. It's almost that proxy for the viewer. What questions would they ask? And what's interesting about this show and the shows that we make now is we try and make them as scalable as possible. Talking Growth with, insert department name here. Talking Growth with sustainability. Talking Growth with our revenue growth management team. Now we can start marketing these sort of branded properties around the organization and see where is there a proper match between our intent in the video, the change we want to see in the world. Is it best represented with this sort of format where it's more informal, it's conversational? Is it best represented by a leader who's speaking directly to you? I'll show you some other things that we looked into. We've recently looked into creating live experiences where we bring in experts from the outside. This is a lot like, is anybody familiar with Talks at Google? We were very much inspired by Talks at Google, and we thought, man, what would that look like? How would we make a Kellogg version of that? And we created a branded experience called Live, right, because it's live. Not very creative, but live is cool because it is different in that it's happening at the moment, and you can be online if you can't make it into the room, and you can type in a question, and this expert's going to answer that question. You could be in the room in a format like this, and you can raise your hand, and you can engage with this expert. It's a video format that's very interesting. It's a little more expensive, it's a little more effortful, but what's interesting about these videos that are available 24/7, if there's no incentive to actually consume the content, you may never consume the content. But if it's an opportunity for you to sit with your colleagues, for you to engage with an expert that you may not ordinarily see or hear from, it has become a really successful format for us. So this is the live version. I'll show you what this looks like.
And you cannot have a sense of authenticity without having a bit of vulnerability. And we tend to think of that as weakness, but in fact it's necessary for connection. So imagine, this was something that he did just sort of off the cuff and it had an effect. But what if businesses, what if organizations intentionally harnessed that power of storytelling to apply it across different business formats? Well, here are just some of the organizations that do that. This is just
So what's interesting about live is it's allowed us to do a couple things. We have the live event where you get to engage, and we're really excited about that. And then we record it, so now it's on demand, which is very interesting. But these are 1-hour presentations. So who has 1 hour to watch a video? Well, maybe some people do, but maybe others don't. So what can we do with this content? We now have a video concept called Live in 5, where we take a 1-hour presentation, we hit the highlights and give you a 5-minute version of it, trying to solve that problem of, hey, I don't have time to consume the entire content. Here's something very interesting. How many video producers do we have out there, people who make videos? Good, a lot. How many of you video producers have actually watched someone watching one of your videos? This is good practice. For those who raise your hands, you should look for these people and ask them, why on earth would you do something like this? And what they might say is, you can learn a ton about how your content is being used by watching people. Not asking people, hey, how did you like that video? Oh, the video pretty good, 5 stars. But let me watch you. Did you watch it on the small screen? On your chest in bed? Did you watch it in transit? I have a good buddy of mine, her name's Michelle, and she hates video, so it was really fun talking to her about this. She's like, oh, you're gonna talk about video? How boring. And I said, hey, let me see your phone. And on an iPhone, you can swipe down and see what the most popular app is. And I said, your most popular app is YouTube. How do you hate video? Are you kidding me? And she said, I don't watch it. I said, well, what on earth do you do with it? Well, it turns out YouTube has spent so much time watching people watch videos, they know that it is very common practice for people to do what with their videos? Just listen. Just listen. In fact, it's so popular, that's a premium service. So if you're willing to kick down $6 a month, you can play your video's audio in the background. You don't even have to watch the video. Now, how powerful is that of an insight? If you're going to make videos and you find out that people are just listening to them, will that change how you position your videos? Yeah, it just might. It absolutely just might. I have another friend who does a podcast. It's a long-form podcast. We always hear like 30 seconds. These videos have to be really, really short. And he does this long-form podcast, and it's 3 hours. And he's like, oh my gosh, 3 hours of content. This is really difficult. I'm going to cut it down. And he has a large listenership, I guess, on a podcast. And he cut it down to 30 minutes. And people hated it. They're like, this is so short. Why did you cut it down? And on Twitter, he asked, he's like, well, what's the deal? Why do you not like it? And you know what people said? I fall asleep to your podcast. And 30 minutes doesn't get me to bed. So the point here is you need to understand your audience. You need to understand if this format is having the impact in the world. And he serves an important role. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm going to try this. And it's great to fall asleep to. He has a soothing voice. He doesn't talk about anything too terribly controversial, and it just lulls you into a very tranquil sleep. He's gone back to the 3 hours, his listenership and subscriptions are back up. Watching people consume your content is a powerful way of understanding the impact that you're having in the world. Vlogging. So this is very interesting. In the organization, we had a lot of push to, hey, just stick a video camera in people's hands and just let them talk. It's gonna be great. And we thought, oh, this sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, so let's do it. And what happened? It was a bit of a disaster. You know, what's funny is we watch these vloggers on YouTube, and it really just looks like they're speaking into the camera, taking you into an environment maybe that you're not used to going. I have people on my team who watch internet vloggers grocery shop. It's not because we're in the CPG industry, but they're just interested in other people's day-to-day experiences. Well, it turns out when you research these vloggers, they're not just grabbing their camera and going grocery shopping, they're storyboarding, they're planning, they're understanding their audience. They're understanding that an audience might be very interested. If you travel a lot for work, you may be interested in seeing them shop in different countries of the world and show what that experience is like. They understand their audience. So we've played a little bit with vlogging. We've really addressed it as how can we take people in environments that they're not used to being in. And here's an example of what we've done.
In the auditorium control room with the DX team, getting ready to do our first Skype broadcast pilot. So stay tuned for more fun. You can see our talent in the front of the auditorium, Michelle and Steph, getting ready to talk about the logistics of how this is going to run. We're still up here in the control room, getting everything ready.
A little bit off of everybody, and what it ends up doing is it makes one stream comes inside of our network, and then everybody shares that stream like a spider web, and the more people that join.
So we did this for a couple reasons. What you saw is a backstage example of how we set up for a live event. And that was the control room. And we did it for a couple purposes. One, we created this welcome package for our speaker, because the speakers often wanted to know, hey, what kind of mic am I going to use, and what's the room dynamic like? And they're often traveling from very far away. So what we did is we vlogged it, and we walked around the environment, and we sent it to them so it would increase their comfort. We also wanted to make sure that we were providing resources to another team that was going to sustain this practice. And they had never seen the back of the house sort of operations. So by vlogging, we were able to give them an experience that was kind of incremental toward the real experience. So that's how we've used vlogging. And it's a very interesting format, but it turns out it's a lot more challenging than you expect it to be. Because if you want to vlog a live event and you have to take multiple takes, well, time's ticking, man. The world is turning. You only have so many times to actually capture it in the way that you want to capture it. So that's vlogging. Vignettes. You're going to see us get a little more into kind of some learning things. One of the powers of video is that it can give you a lot of information of what something is going to be like. So imagine you're a manager and you have to have your first performance conversation with someone who's not performing. I mean, this is a bit of a tricky conversation to have. What might it look like? How might someone else handle this? So creating vignettes so you can see how someone else handles it could be really powerful. This is maybe a more traditional use of video, but we find it to be really effective to give people a view of what is the expected performance. What does it kind of look like?
Hey Steph, thanks for meeting with me again. I really appreciate it.
Sure, I just finished up some work. So the last time that we met, we discussed different ways of getting you ready for training. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I've worked through some of the things we talked about, such as practicing with the script beforehand and practicing in the training room.
So these vignettes, we're also finding these vignettes are interesting to be able to put into other content, and they're often very reusable. If you're talking about generalized skills, these are things that you can use in a lot of different environments. Motion graphics. This is an area, so here's something interesting. You know, 20 years ago, where was the best technology, at home or at work? I mean, it was at work. We often didn't have internet connections at home. We didn't have sweet computers. That's why there's a thing called Cyber Monday. You talk to younger people and they're like, what is this? They've never been in a world where there's no internet at home. Why do we have Cyber Monday? Why do we still have Cyber Monday? Anyway, what's interesting now though is that's completely flipped. The technology, where's the best technology now, at home or at work? Goodness gracious, often it's at home. You know, we have great, I just bought a new iPhone that has a liquid retina display. I have no idea what that means, but it's amazing. That display is incredible. I wait for nothing. And when I watch YouTube videos, there's a certain quality standard that I expect. And if it's not there, what do? I just have to look at a couple other suggested videos and I'm gonna find it. So what does that mean? When we look at the consumers of our content, there's a level of expectation. There's a level of production expectation. It's not just the case that, oh, if you throw it on video, it's gonna be great, everybody's gonna love it. Sorry, we are far more sophisticated consumers of content than we ever were before. So what that means, as learning producers, we need to elevate to that standard. We need to at least meet it. And it should be a good match for what we're trying to do. So we've explored motion graphics. There's a lot of ways to do motion graphics, but we found that that helps elevate the experience and elevate the standard. This was a motion graphic video we created for a website launch. And we were inspired by product launches. A great resource for getting ideas of high quality videos that really hype and get people excited is to, be careful with this though, go to Kickstarter and leave your credit card off of the site. And you watch these videos and they are very compelling. They're exceptional videos. And often they'll use motion graphics. There's going to be a good combination of motion graphics and videos, and you'll find yourself ordering a whole bunch of stuff, and you'll forget about it, and 2 years later you get this thing like a cup that tells me what's inside of it? Why did I ever want that? You know, but it's really a good location for inspiration. Now, motion graphics, they can be expensive to make on a custom basis. But there are so many resources for pre-made motion graphics that will help you get this sort of style. That slowly turning screen on a laptop, that is a canned motion graphic. We simply just put in whatever screen we wanted. Now we do have the capability to do some custom stuff, but what we found is the investment in custom really gonna pay back? And more we're finding out it probably will not. And if it does, let's build it once, and we're gonna have to repurpose that a lot to really get our value out of that. So don't be scared off by the fact that this might be expensive and foreign. There are so many motion graphics resources that are available that are canned that you can put right into your programs. All right, so we showed you different formats, and what brings life to these formats is storyboarding. Storyboarding has completely transformed the way that we do video. So how do we storyboard? Well, we started by buying really expensive software. That was a mess because you would put the lighting position. It's stuff that these professionals probably know how to do. It was way beyond our skill set. We would have to draw the scenes and put in all these production notes. It was way more than we needed. So then we went low tech to use a tool that we had. We just used PowerPoint. It's pretty darn effective, you know, some graphics on the screen and then some text. But even that got a little cumbersome, and where we've ended up is we've ended up with Post-its. We've ended up with Post-its where the first two things we write out is, how is this video gonna change the world? That's at the very top. What's the best format? And then we storyboard out. Here's all the content. These are the things that we wanna talk about. And then we bring someone over to our desk and say, hey, I have a video, let me run you through it. You know, it goes like this. And if they don't grab your Post-its and say, what about this? Then they're not doing their job. What's brilliant about going analog is you can tell so many different versions of your story very quickly. And every time you make a new iteration of that story, what should you be looking at to see if you're going on the right track? That goal, that sticky at the top that says, this is how the video is going to change the world. Is it best this way? Is it best that way? And once you feel like it gets it done and it's a good format match, then pick up your tools. Randall and I, later this afternoon, because often people will ask us more technical questions, we're going to have a technical session. So if you're interested in software, technique, lighting, stuff like that, if you really want to go geeky, which we love to do, we invite you to that session where we'll get more in detail. But I'll tell you, if you just adopt a very rapid way. And if you don't use Post-it notes, that's fine. You could use it on PowerPoint too. Go into slide sorter mode and do very much the same thing. You know, choose the tool that works, but give yourself the flexibility and do not fall in love with a single sequence. Push yourself to try the different sequence and let someone else decide, because ultimately we make stuff for other people, not just for us. So you got to be cautious about falling in love with your stuff, and that's feedback for me too, because I often do. The production and distribution of video, boy, we're in such a different world. I mentioned that I loved capturing video. I don't like editing video. I still don't like editing video. I have so much video that is unedited, but there are technology companies that have solutions now. There are companies now, an example will be GoPro's product called Quick. Is anybody familiar with Quick? Go check this out. This is amazing. It's a combination of AI, machine learning that is going to edit the video for you. It's going to look for the faces. It's going to look for the quick scene changes. It's going to apply the right beats per minute music to your videos. Last year, as an exercise for my team, I took a lot of video here at Learning, and I threw it into Quick, and I edited it. And I showed it to my team. And the people who do video editing, they're like, how did you do that? And I said, I didn't do it. Quick did it. So what's interesting is I think that we're kind of at an inflection point where if we want to do custom editing, okay, is it going to have the payout? But are there tools that might allow us to edit things automatically? So I imagine if you want to create a video that covers a training program or some sort of event, do you have to have an individual doing that, or can you outsource this to a tool that might do it for you? The stuff that's going on in editing is fascinating, and it is very exciting, and I encourage you to look. And that's just one tool. There are many tools that are doing this. In fact, there are some tools that will even look at your photo library, get a sense of who you take pictures of, and then it'll prioritize their faces. So if you're shooting a little Johnny soccer game, well, there's a bunch of other kids out there, but it's going to focus on Johnny's face. Well, how does it know that? Because you have nothing but pictures of Johnny on your phone, right? So these tools are going to start helping us, but there's trouble in that. If we outsource everything to the machines, like what do we do? And I think what we do is we still have a role in that creative, in that storyboarding, and remembering that our role is to add value, take the complex, make it simple, and make it high quality, make it functional. I think we're the ultimate arbiters of that. We can't just outsource it all quite yet. Maybe that time will come. So the journey continues, and I'll tell you a few things that we're exploring. Some things that didn't work out so well, but because we're so interested in this format of video, we started to explore immersive video. So we started shooting some 360 videos, and it has been eye-opening. So we're pretty well practiced in what we call video in the rectangle. Like we know what to put in the rectangle and how much to put in the rectangle, and don't zoom in the rectangle, come on. And be careful with your panning. Our technique is pretty good, but when the rectangle becomes a sphere, and when you give the tools of vantage to the user, well, what are they looking at? So what did we do? When we first started shooting 360 videos, we got in meetings and we're writing on the board, how do we get the learner to look at what we want them to look at? Well, that's rectangle thinking, right? Where you're pointing the camera, you're making the decision for the learner. Spherical thinking, immersive thinking, is very, very different. The learner has full agency to look at whatever they want. So how does whatever they want add value? So what we did is we did a pilot of shooting some video in-store because we do a lot of in-store operations. We're very concerned about getting the right product that you guys want to buy in the right location and to do it quickly and safely. So we created some 360 video where, frankly, it doesn't matter where the learner is looking. They might be able to find different things based on wherever they're looking. And we made sure that every view had something of interest. Maybe it's a safety thing, maybe it's a distribution thing, maybe it's a quality of service thing. But we had to kind of release this control. Now sometimes you need to prompt the learner that, hey, it's this way, and there are some tools like spatial audio. Now this is fascinating, where you can have audio that will prompt people to look in a certain way. Now you can always add things to the video like arrows. Don't look this way, look that way, but then that's rectangle thinking. Spatial audio is a lot more natural way. imagine if you had a friend on my shoulder, right by my shoulder saying, Eric, come this way. I would hear the audio louder in this ear than this ear, so naturally what would I do? I would orient towards them, and then I may follow them. So we're learning really interesting techniques in this 360 space. Now, whereas I think the technology for rectangle video, from production to distribution to consumption, boy, it is there. It is impressive. In fact, we can capture 4K video on many phones. A lot of times we can't even watch at that high resolution. So our capture is better than our consumption. 360 is a little bit of a different story. When you go from the rectangle to the sphere, the amount of increased data is tremendous. People want to see video in high refresh. People want to see video that is very silky smooth. So when we shot these videos, we shot with the best technology we had at the time, which was 8K, and we were thinking, gosh, that's a lot of Ks, this has got to do it. And we put it on people's phones, and we put people in their goggles. And we said, all right, you're in spatial audio land, what do you think? And some people started to walk. We're like, oh, don't walk, you can't walk yet. Just look around. Other people didn't want to look around. Well, we put people in chairs like this, and then we stuck them in their goggles, and we said, all right, enjoy the video. Well, how am I going to look behind me? For God's sake, this thing is like cumbersome. We watched people consuming our content, and we learned a tremendous amount. And we got to the point where, okay, immersive video, 360 video, is a stand-up experience. We actually put tape on the floor to create this little barrier, and we put a piece of paper in the middle so people could kind of feel it with their foot, so they had an anchor point. And we spaced people out so they wouldn't run into each other. And we said, all right, how about this? And people would watch the video, and some people, after about 90 seconds, they would take off their goggles and they'd go like this. It was making them sick. They weren't feeling quite well. Why is that? The refresh rate and the speed at which we could deliver the video isn't quite there yet, and we experienced that as a limitation. Some people got vertigo, and this is an interesting thing, but some people spend a lot of time on their hair. And that's an important thing. And if you're going to stick this big, clunky, awkward headset that's going to be on their hair and they got to take it out, now they got this weird old cowlick, and we're taking pictures because we're doing user studies, right? They're like, I don't like this. So the future of immersive is fascinating, but I think the technology is still catching up, and we're still learning when is it appropriate. Our best thinking right now is that immersive video could be part of a larger learning intervention. So maybe we're doing a session together and you go immersive for a few seconds, for 30 seconds. Maybe we say, I want you to verify that our shelf is correctly set. Go into the virtual immersive store and let me know if you see it correctly. And they go in and they look around and then they come back out of the experience. So these hybrid experiences, that's our best thinking right now. In the future, are we going to go full immersive? I hope so. I hope it works effectively. I hope we don't have to wear these big, expensive things. And I hope that I was in the Ericsson talk, with 5G, it seems like that's going to be the technology that enables us to transmit sufficient data to be able to get this video to where it needs to be. Now, I'll tell you one other thing that we're investigating that I find fascinating. A limiting factor of video is that it has to do a little bit with vanity. Some people don't like what they look like on video, right? Don't videotape me, or if you're going to do it, don't do it close. The fact that we're capturing video of people's faces could be a barrier to their message and what they want to share. Well, there's some technologies that might come to the rescue. Now, when I FaceTime at home, I could FaceTime as a Tyrannosaurus Rex, as a fox, as a ghost. There's even a dirtier one I could do that I refuse to do, but it's an option. We can now wear digital masks. Now, if you just wore a digital mask that was flat, that would be very ineffective. But one of the powers of video is you could see facial inflection. You can connect with folks. Now, these animated emojis will reflect your facial affect. Now, I'll be open with you, we have not brought this to work yet. We're not sure if our executives or our video actors want to be wearing these masks. But if that's a way to reduce that barrier, hey, I don't want to share my message because I'm afraid that my face, how I look, is going to be a barrier. Or how I sound, you can change voices as well. Here's something very interesting. In a global company, one challenge with video is what language are you going to choose to speak in? Well, if I'm wearing an Animoji and I'm moving my mouth, This may eventually go to like kind of one of those Japanese dub movies, but it's conceivable that you could get a local voice. It's conceivable that you can do translation in a very different way. I think that we are in a renaissance of makers of creativity. It's such an exciting time to be in this space. And I hope that our journey has inspired you guys to produce more, to explore more. And if you are interested, we welcome you to our session that's a little later today. And I'm happy to entertain any sort of questions that we have. We have the, what is this box called? The catch box. So we'll be throwing that around. Yeah, GoPro makes the software quick, and I have it on my iPhone. I'd imagine they have it on Android as well. And here's what I found. The desktop version, you have to have a GoPro camera. That format is very important. But in the one that's on my iPhone, I can shoot video out of my iPhone and use Quick as well without my GoPro. It's a fascinating app. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we look forward to seeing you this afternoon. Oh, you have a question, please.
I'm so glad I caught that. Where do you store your videos? Our company, we have a hard time finding a spot to store them.
Do you mean store for streaming or
Yeah.
archiving? For streaming?
For streaming, for your viewers to actually use them.
Yeah, we have a couple places that we're using. Corporately, we have a solution that's internally hosted. So for more sensitive videos, that's where it is. We partner with our IT organization. We also have other solutions like Vimeo. We have a Vimeo professional account. All of our videos are produced, and they're unlisted. They're not password protected. We're very cautious about what we put out there, but these things are unlisted. They're listed as private, so they don't come up in searches. But it gives us a tremendous amount of information. And what's interesting is we have great tools to produce, great tools to distribute, great tools to consume, but probably the most important thing that we have right now is we have incredible data. We know who's watching it, when they're watching it, and a lot of different tools have this, but you could even see when do people dump out of your movies, your videos. You know, I wish I had that during that 10-minute video that we took and we distributed. I just assumed everybody watched it, right? But you start watching these videos and you see if people are dumping out at predictable intervals. Why is that? There are tools to show whether or not video is in front, the frontmost window, or it's behind something. That's interesting too. So when I say watch people consuming your content, it doesn't necessarily mean you should be shoulder to shoulder, kind of watching them on their device. You can watch the data as well, and the data could potentially tell you. And if the window is not the foremost window, you might be able to assume, hey, maybe the audio is a little more important than the video.
Do you have any type of like pre-meetings before you do shoot your videos so that you let the individuals know what you're doing and the whole setup so they don't come in cold?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. We make sure that the talent knows what format we're gonna do. And we've explored a couple different options for preparing talent. Everything from creating an e-learning, I think that we titled it, what was it, Randall?
Being great on video.
Yeah, being great on video. And it was everything from, please don't wear highly patterned shirts because you'll get moire effect that we can't get out and it's just as distracting. Practice, all these sort of things. We found out that while that was great, it wasn't used very much. So probably the most effective thing is we'll meet with the talent beforehand, we'll talk to them, we'll say this is the plan. And we'll also sell them on the storyboard, we'll sell them on how the video is going to change the world, and we'll sell them on the format. So we get that alignment beforehand as they're coming in.
Got a question over here?
Great.
Hi, good morning. Do you ever do any formalized assessment to tie in with these videos?
Our assessment. Right now, our assessments have been fairly basic. We look at consumption numbers, that's really important to us. Mm-hmm. We also ask opinions. Here's where we need to go. Video is a means to an end. And if we are truly going to add value the way that we should be, we need to know that. There are a lot of times where we deal with something kind of tough in our organization. You may have a leader that is fully committed that the way to get this message out is video, period. Whether you tell me it is or it is not, I'm committed to video. Those are opportunities for us to strengthen our video skills and maybe even practice our influence skills. But I do think that we need to get to the point of being better at sharing that data. When is this effective? When is this not effective? And a lot of times the consumption data helps us do that. It helps us to go to a leader and say, all right, we put this together, it was 10 minutes, people dumped out after 3, which means that effectively you have 7 minutes of waste. That is often a good context for us to go back and say, why don't we try this? And now we get to blow up the solution and we get to look for something that might be a little more effective.
Making me run.
Go ahead.
When's the next session?
The next session is, Randall?
1:30.
1:30. In the background, we have a couple questions.
Thank you. Use your interactive video to enrich your videos, like questions or menus or links for more information.
Is it a question about animated videos?
No, interactive videos.
Oh, interactive videos.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. This is also something we're fascinated by, and this is a project, this is fresh. We just got into this last week. There is, maybe I have a minute to tell you about how videos are really awful. Let me do it that way. Here's something that we find really an issue with video when compared to reading. Have you ever tried to fast forward or rewind a digital video? It's awful. Like when I do it on YouTube or when I do it on Netflix, like I'll do it and then it'll never reload back. The opportunity or the ability to scrub or to scan video is not quite where it needs to be. And if you think of how we read, you can quickly scan something. So if there's content that you're not interested in a written document, people are great at scanning through that very quickly. We're not great at doing that with video. Also, with folks, when they read, you can kind of see the structure of the whole thing all at once. We can't necessarily see that in video. So there are tools that we're exploring around bookmarking video, taking your own notes, having really good video indexes where we could say, hey, here's the entire structure of the video. You could jump to the part that's interesting to you. We're also inspired by these old choose your own adventure books, where now we can create branching videos where you have some context up front and then it's like, what would you do? Would you go into the forest to find like the sword of power, or are you going to go into the ocean and float the river of souls? I don't know. Anyway, you can click on that and it can guide you through things, and that could be a very interesting way for us to manifest learning and give the learner some agency, and maybe even add some replay value to videos where there might be multiple scenarios that you can experience. It's something that we can do now with linking videos that load very quickly. So that's the level of interactivity that we're exploring right now.
You talked about being able to watch people watching your videos. So how do you do that before you film it? Like at what point do you start engaging people to make sure that you're not wasting your money filming this video and then finding out that it's a complete disaster or not what you expected?
Yeah, so a couple responses to that. One, at the post-it state. That's the first time where you can watch somebody watching your video. Bring people that you don't ordinarily work with as well, because we get a little bit of groupthink in our group, just naturally because we know each other, we kind of know very similar things. But pull someone who may be not part of the core audience and say, hey, what was the purpose of this? And if they can communicate that, you have a broad message. So that's the first step. After that, once you've produced something, it's a little late to diagnose a problem because you're in it, right? You're fully invested. But still, you should have people watch it because you can always re-edit. You can make something smaller, you can expand. So those are some degrees of freedom. Guys, thank you so much for coming to this talk. I really enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.